In 1975, Yamaha brought a race bike to the Indianapolis Mile that was so violently powerful, it changed flat track racing forever. Kenny Roberts showed up, sat on it for the first time, and destroyed a field of Harley-Davidsons doing 30 miles per hour slower. His famous words after winning, "They don't pay me enough to ride this thing." But here's the shocking part. Within months, Kenny Roberts himself voted to ban his own creation. This is the shocking truth behind Yamaha's illegal TZ750 engine. The mid-1970s were the golden age of motorcycle racing's most dangerous era. Formula 750 was where manufacturers went to war, and Yamaha was losing. While their smaller TZ250 and TZ350 bikes dominated lightweight classes, the big boys were playing in 750cc territory. Kawasaki had unleashed their brutal KR750 triple. Suzuki's TR750 was making headlines with innovative engineering. Yamaha needed something extraordinary to compete. Their engines did something that seemed simple but was actually insane. They essentially doubled their successful TZ350's twin-cylinder engine. But this wasn't just about adding cylinders. The engineering challenges were staggering. The result was a 694cc liquid-cooled inline 4-cylinder two-stroke that produced 125 horsepower, nearly double what Harley riders were working with. At just 340 pounds, it was as light as it was powerful. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a missile with wheels that redefined what was possible in motorcycle engineering. But here's what made it truly terrifying: the power delivery. Ray Abrams, who built the original prototype, described it as having a light switch power band that activated violently at 7,000 RPM and screamed to 11,000 RPM. Where traditional flat-track engines built power gradually, the T750 delivered explosive acceleration that could overwhelm rear tire grip in an instant. The exhaust system alone was a marvel of engineering complexity. 4 individual expansion chambers had to be precisely tuned to work together, creating a sound that was part Formula 1 engine, part jet engine. When the TZ750 fired up, everything else on the racetrack sounded primitive by comparison. The TZ750 could hit 180 miles per hour on racing road circuits, a staggering speed when most racing was still happening on bikes that struggled to reach 130. But this was a Formula 750 road racing bike being modified for American flat track, where bikes were supposed to be predictable, controllable, and safe for close-pack racing. What Yamaha created was the exact opposite of everything flat track racing stood for. American flat track racing in 1975 had clear rules and clearer expectations. Harley-Davidson dirt bikes dominated. Racing was close, competitive, and relatively safe. Riders knew what to expect from their machines and from each other. Then Yamaha decided to bring their road racing monster to dirt. Only 6 TZ750 flat trackers were ever built. 6. That's how exclusive this machine was. Doug Schwirmer of Champion Racing Frames built specialized chassis after Steve Baker and mechanic Bob Work brought him a displayed TZ750 from a California dealer show. Each bike cost approximately $15,000 to build, an astronomical sum in 1975. Their frames had to be completely redesigned for dirt track use, since a road racing chassis couldn't handle the different load patterns and impacts of oval racing. The 6 bikes were distributed to Kenny Roberts, Steve Baker, Randy Kleek, Skip Askeland, Don Vesco, and Rick Hocking. But having the bike didn't guarantee success or survival. But here's what made the whole situation even more incredible. Kenny Roberts, the man chosen to ride this beast, had never even sat on one before race day. "I never saw the motorcycle before. Showed up on the racetrack, I sat on it. That was the first time I ever sat on it," Roberts later recalled. "We won the race." Think about that for a moment. A professional racer at the highest level of American flat track, riding a completely unknown machine against riders who'd been perfecting their craft on familiar bikes for years. It was like showing up to a gunfight with an experimental laser weapon you'd never fired before. Roberts' first practice lap nearly ended in disaster. "The first time I came out of turn 4 on the first lap, I moved onto the handlebars to get some grip and the thing jumped into the air, and I damn near looped it." The bike's 340-pound frame was struggling to contain forces designed for pavement, not loose dirt, and Roberts was about to discover just how dangerous this machine really was. What made the TZ750 so devastatingly dangerous wasn't just raw power, it was what that power did to the only technology available in 1975, the tires. Ray Abrams documented the fundamental problem. The excessive horsepower caused dirt track tire treads to flex dramatically, creating ferocious wobbles on straightaways. This created an impossible engineering situation. Road racing slicks wouldn't flex, but they provided zero traction in dirt track corners. Traditional knobby tires could grip in corners, but they would literally tear themselves apart under the TZ750's power on straights. During testing, Abrams took the bike to a drag strip while it was still in road racing trim. It turned 138 miles per hour in around 9.5 seconds in its stock form, so we knew it was going to be a whole lot faster. But speed wasn't the only problem. The bike's handling characteristics were fundamentally incompatible with traditional flat track technique. Instead of smooth power application through corners, riders had to manage explosive power delivery that could light up the rear tire at any moment. It's hard to go fast, especially on a dirt track, because it doesn't get much grip, Roberts explained. And it's hard to read that track on 140 miles per hour. When other bikes were doing 115 miles per hour, Roberts was hitting 145 miles per hour plus. That's a 30 mile per hour speed differential, an almost unimaginable gap in professional racing that created closing speeds flat track racing had never dealt with before. The 1975 Indianapolis Mile became legendary for all the wrong reasons. What happened that day exposed just how completely the TZ750 could dominate traditional American racing. Roberts spent the first few laps in last place, trying to figure out how to ride something that didn't really like the groove. Traditional flat track racing happened in a narrow groove where riders could get traction. The TZ750 had so much power that it couldn't get grip in the normal racing line. So Roberts did something that shouldn't have been possible. He went wide, running a completely different line than every other rider on the track. I kept going wide out on the inside, Roberts remembered. The last 2 laps, the back wheel was just tapping the hay bales, but the bike was literally destroying itself during the race. Roberts' tire was chunking, losing pieces of tread from the massive power loads. Worse yet, his tire had wrapped hay bale wire from hitting the barriers during his wild outside line. The speed differential created terrifying moments that could have ended in tragedy. One time I went into turn 1 and Gary Scott and Mert Lawler were racing each other, and luckily Mert went on the outside. Had Mert stayed where he was when I pitched it in, I would have took him out. With 2 laps to go, Robert had worked his way from last to 3rd place. Then something happened that nobody expected. The TZ750's power advantage finally overcame its handling problems. I got to drive that last lap, which I couldn't believe, Roberts recalled. 2 feet before the start-finish line, I thought, man, I'm gonna win this thing. The crowd reaction was unprecedented. People were jumping out of the bleachers and the whole straightaway was full of people screaming and yelling, Roberts remembered. The place went nuts, totally insane. I've never seen anything like it, ever. It was complete chaos. But the rider himself knew something was fundamentally wrong with what had just happened. All I could say at that point was that they don't pay me enough to ride this thing. Roberts' victory at Indianapolis wasn't just an isolated incident. It was part of a terrifying pattern that proved the bike was simply too dangerous for flat track racing. The TZ750's brief racing career was marked by a series of increasingly dangerous incidents that terrified even experienced professionals. At San Jose Mile in September 1975, Roberts crashed during practice in a tank-slapping incident that sent him into the wall with such violence that parts of his bike were found among spectators and had to be re-welded. The crash highlighted the bike's fundamental instability at high speeds on loose surfaces. Traditional flat-track bikes might slide or high-side, but they did so in predictable ways that experienced riders could manage. The TZ750's crashes were different, sudden, violent, and completely unpredictable. At Syracuse Mile, the TZ750 proved useless due to track conditions that favored high-torque, low-RPM engines. The track surface was loose and powdery, exactly the kind of conditions where the TZ750's explosive power delivery became a liability rather than an advantage. Roberts couldn't even keep the bike pointed straight, much less competitive. The pattern was becoming clear. The TZ750 wasn't just fast in the wrong way, it was dangerous in ways that traditional flat-track racing couldn't accommodate. Each race revealed new problems that had never been encountered before. Other manufacturers were scrambling to respond with their own weapons of mass destruction. Kawasaki had already developed H2R triples for Gary Nixon, Don Castro, and Scott Brailsford. These bikes were nearly as powerful as the TZ750, though they came with their own terrifying characteristics that made them barely controllable. Tuner Irv Kanemoto even experimented with a Big Bang 360-degree crank where all 3 cylinders fired simultaneously, creating a massive power pulse that was supposed to improve traction. The vibration proved so excessive that riders couldn't hold onto the handlebars, but the project showed just how desperate manufacturers were becoming to match the TZ750's dominance. The racing establishment was in full panic mode. Having one bike circulate 30 miles per hour faster than the rest of the field created dangerous closing speeds that flat track racing had never dealt with before. Traditional passing zones became death traps when speed differentials were that extreme. Safety crews weren't equipped to handle the type of high-speed crashes that the TZ750 could produce. Track officials found themselves facing an unprecedented situation. How do you regulate a machine that follows the rules but breaks the sport? The TZ750 was technically legal under existing Formula 750 regulations that had been adapted for flat track racing. The problem was that those regulations were written when nobody imagined a 125 horsepower dirt track bike was possible. Within months of the Indianapolis Mile victory, the AMA Rules Committee faced a decision that would define American flat track racing for decades. 20 committee members voted to implement new rules requiring a minimum piston displacement of 335 cc and maximum of 2 cylinders for either 2-stroke or 4-stroke engines. The rule eliminated not just the TZ750's 4-cylinder configuration, but also Kawasaki's H2R triple and Suzuki's triple variants. But here's the most shocking part of the entire story. Both Kenny Roberts and his mechanic Kel Carruthers voted to ban their own creation. Roberts' reasoning was brutally honest. I voted to ban it. This wasn't the right motorcycle for its time because it was going to kill someone, and I didn't want that to be me. If you were to turn 10 of them loose on a racetrack, the guy who was probably going to get hit was me. Carruthers was equally definitive. I voted to ban the bike. It was just one more bike that some guys would need to run the series, but dirt track was mainly a Harley deal and it was better to leave it as is. Think about that for a moment. The man who won the most legendary race in flat track history on the most dominant machine ever built voted to destroy his own achievement to save the sport he loved. For Yamaha, the ban was both a victory and a defeat. They'd proven their engineering superiority so completely that they had been legislated out of the competition. The TZ750 was too good for its own good. The ban created a firestorm in the motorcycle press that revealed deep divisions about the future of American racing. Cycle World's D. Randy Riggs delivered a scathing 1976 critique that became legendary in racing journalism. If you and I, the spectators, are denied the chance to witness these magnificent motorcycles in action on the racetracks of this country, this AMA group has not only cheated us, they've robbed us blind. But riders understood the stakes differently. Roberts was blunt about the human cost. It became immediately clear that someone was going to die riding such a bike, or cause someone else to die. I wasn't interested in either option. Steve Baker, who won the Formula 750 World Championship in 1977 and rode TZ750s throughout their evolution, provided perspective. I came through a very important time of development for Yamaha. I rode them all. The one with drum brakes, the one with disc brakes, the ones that were air-cooled, water-cooled. Baker's experience highlighted how rapidly motorcycle technology was advancing. The TZ750 represented the culmination of this technological arms race, and perhaps its logical conclusion. The controversy exposed the fundamental tension between technological advancement and competitive safety. The TZ750 represented pure engineering excellence that was incompatible with the sport it was designed to dominate. Racing had reached a crossroads: allow unlimited technological development that would fundamentally change flat track racing, or preserve the sport's traditional character through regulation. The ban established an important precedent in American motorcycle racing. Technological advancement had to be balanced against competitive equity and rider safety. Pure performance wasn't enough if it destroyed the sport itself. Looking back at the TZ750's flat track controversy, what's most remarkable is how completely Yamaha misunderstood what they were creating. They built a magnificent riding motorcycle that was fundamentally incompatible with the racing discipline they intended it for. The TZ750 was a masterpiece of Formula 750 engineering. Lightweight, powerful, technologically advanced, and devastatingly fast. In road racing, these characteristics made it competitive with other similarly advanced machines. But flat track racing operated on completely different principles. Success depended on traction management, close racing, and predictable handling characteristics that allowed wheel-to-wheel competition. The TZ750's explosive power delivery, lightweight construction, and road racing-oriented design created a machine that excelled in isolation but couldn't race safely with traditional flat-track bikes. Modern riders who've experienced the TZ750 describe it in terms that sound more like natural disasters than motorcycles. "Every time I fire this thing up, my hands start sweating," admits one owner. "It's emotionally moving to be involved with this thing. The bike demands respect," as one owner puts it. Even experienced riders find it intimidating. "You get on this thing, you're all asses and elbows." When you start lighting up the rear tire and getting things sideways at slow speed, it's really a little unnerving. Here's the ultimate twist in the TZ750's story. Kenny Roberts' original race-winning machine, the bike that threatened to destroy Harley-Davidson's flat-track dominance, now sits on display at Red Rock Harley-Davidson in Las Vegas. The machine that terrified the racing establishment has become a museum piece in the very dealership that the manufacturer nearly made obsolete. It's a final irony that captures everything about this controversial bike. Revolutionary technology that was too advanced for its time, preserved by the very people it was built to defeat. But the story of the other 5 bikes reveals the broader impact of the ban. Steve Baker's bike eventually found its way into private collections, where it's occasionally fired up for demonstration rides that still terrify experienced riders. Randy Kleek's machine disappeared into obscurity, possibly destroyed or converted back to road racing specification. The bikes that do survive serve as reminders of what might have been, and what probably shouldn't have been. Each one represents a path not taken in American racing, a future that was deliberately chosen against in favor of competitive balance and rider safety. The TZ750 flat track controversy established precedents that influenced American motorcycle racing for decades. The principle that technological advancement could be limited to preserve competitive balance became standard practice across multiple racing disciplines. It was a philosophical shift that prioritized the health of the sport over pure technological advancement. When Honda's RS750 threatened Harley dominance in the 1980s, mandatory restrictor plates appeared in 1987, a direct descendant of the TZ750 precedent. Modern American flat track continues similar manufacturer politics today, with regular rules adjustments designed to prevent any single manufacturer from achieving overwhelming dominance. The ban also changed how manufacturers approached racing development. Instead of building the fastest possible machine and hoping to dominate, companies began designing bikes that would be competitive within expected regulatory constraints. The TZ750 taught the industry that being too successful could be just as dangerous as being unsuccessful. Kenny Roberts' victory became a landmark moment in American racing history, proving that exceptional rider skill could tame even the most uncontrollable machinery. His ability to win on a bike he'd never ridden before became the stuff of racing legend, but it also served as a cautionary tale about the risks of pushing technology beyond safe limits. All my experience, all the things that you learned from when I was 14 years old to 1975 was put into them 25 laps, Roberts later reflected. It was just something that lives inside of me that is very special. The victory transformed Roberts from a talented flat track racer into a global legend, opening doors to World Championship Grand Prix racing that might not have existed otherwise. In a way, the TZ750's ban launched Roberts towards even greater achievements on the world stage, where his fearless approach to unrideable machines would make him a 3-time world champion. But the most lasting impact was on the sport itself. Flat track racing survived the TZ750 challenge and thrived for decades afterwards, proving that sometimes limiting technology can strengthen rather than weaken competitive racing. The close, exciting racing that defines modern American flat track exists partly because the TZ750 was banned before it could destroy what made the sport special. The TZ750 flat track story offers important lessons about how innovation can sometimes go too far. The motorcycle industry's continued advancement creates similar challenges today, where pure engineering excellence must be balanced against competitive equity and safety considerations. The story also demonstrates how quickly technological superiority can threaten the fundamental character of a sport. The TZ750 didn't just win races, it made traditional racing meaningless by operating in a completely different performance category. For modern racing fans, the TZ750 controversy represents a fascinating intersection of engineering excellence, competitive politics, and sporting tradition that continues to influence how racing balances innovation with equity. The bike that was too good for flat track racing became a symbol of what happens when pure engineering advancement meets the practical realities of competitive sport. The TZ750 flat track controversy poses an essential question about racing philosophy. Should the fastest machine win, regardless of competitive consequences? Yamaha built the fastest flat track bike ever created. Kenny Roberts proved it could be ridden successfully, but racing authorities banned it to preserve competitive balance, and Roberts himself voted for the ban. Was this the right decision? The survival and continued popularity of American flat track racing suggests it was, but the TZ750's revolutionary technology eventually found its way into racing applications where it belonged. The controversy ultimately demonstrated that great engineering and great racing don't always align. Sometimes preserving what makes racing special requires limiting what makes machines special. Kenny Roberts' assessment remains the perfect summary: "They don't pay me enough to ride this thing." Some motorcycles are simply too much for the racing they're intended for. The TZ750 was one of them, a machine so advanced that its own creator voted to destroy it. What do you think? Should racing authorities have banned the TZ750, or should technological advancement be unlimited regardless of competitive consequences? Have you ever experienced a motorcycle that felt like too much for its intended purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want more stories about racing controversies that changed motorcycle history, hit that subscribe button and notification bell for more deep dives into the machines that push boundaries too far.